after my LinkedIn post, a couple of people reached out to me asking if I can show them an end-to-end flow of the application which I developed. I thought I would take some time to create that kind of video. So what happens is most product stewardship processes were built for a slower regulatory one. A supplier changes something today and it can trigger reclassification or SDS revision or variable lever or PCN or UFA re-notification or even dangerous goods reviews or safety checks. But but what we need is some kind of governance and a quicker to resolution. So in this demo, what I'm trying to show you is a neutral plot I'm going to take, and the supplier is going to make one of the ingredient change the concentration. The active substance ingredient concentration is going to change from certain level to certain level. And we'll see how the platform identifies the impact, assesses the regulatory consequences, and regenerates the control output and produces an audit-ready decision trail. So this is not a document automation, it is some kind of process flow. So let me log into the system and let me log into the system. So first and foremost, to understand my supplier has indeed sent me a email. I have an automated mechanism where the supplier data is something which I get from my product compliance change impact radar. Under the change impact radar, you can clearly see that supplier X, supplier reformulation impact, brand X disinfectant. That particular person has, the supplier has changed the data, which resulted in 17 objects, and the brand X candidates composition, if they got changed because which might impact the label variants, and the impacted objects are the composition intake, then it also impacts the market release intelligence, and it is also going to impact me the substance impact graph also is going to impact. So all of these things are going to be impacted because of this change. So you can clearly see that the particular substance which is changed by the supplier has an implication. In reality, you get this kind of details outside the system. You don't know the train, and it will take a lot of time to understand and get a product stewardship, get this kind of mail communication. It takes a lot of time. So this is a trigger. A supplier has updated the technical data. In the manual process, this usually starts with an email, then becomes a spreadsheet, then becomes a ticket, then the real downstream impact is discovered gradually. But here, the supplier event is treated as a governance signal. The platform immediately tells which products, which composition, which countries, which regulatory obligations are impacted. Okay, so this is the first thing which I would like to show you, the differentiating capability of this platform. The second one is, let's see the composition. For example, let me get into the composition. For example, product composition intake. And here you can see the product composition intake, disinfectant spray 78. You can clearly see the graph in terms of formulation of what is the product composition take. You can see the biocidal active substance, how the ingredient 5.3% is changed, that particular neutral surfactant, and these are different things. You can clearly see that biocidal active substance, active ingredient is 5.3, and regulatory approvals before is needed. And you can clearly see that the details of why this has been released and what is its version, and those kind of details of information. So it gives you a clear record of your concentration versions which you are trying to maintain. That is, the compositions are not overwritten. The current released version remains intact. The supplier updates creates a new candidate version. That distinction matters because version 3.2 is still the truth for historical shipments, and anything already released in V3.3 candidates is the version we are assessing right now. This platform shows the precise delta. Active ingredients increased from 4.8 to 5.3 with impurity percentages, and other components remains unchanged. So this is what it is going to give you the answer. Let me now go into the data, how it is going to impact you. So let me go into the data rule studio. Rule Studio is a place where you can clearly see your GHS classifications and other central rules which you can create. In our previous rules cases, you usually work with a scenario where the regulatory content is given by the supplier. You need to purchase them, but here it is a structure comes with the system, and you can develop your own rules with the framework which has given. We have provided some kind of what you call visual builder. Using the visual builders, you have ability to create a rule artifact with the conditions, with the facts, with operators and those kind of things, with promotion layout, payload and everything. I can give some kind of detailed training sessions on this rule editor, how it is structured and what it does. You can clearly see you can create this kind of structure with some kind of some flashpoint template, for example, if it is there. You can clearly see how the classic data is structured, how the classic, for example, the flashpoint classification I have given, how it is shown with condition, with groups and everything is there. You can clearly have an idea. So the studio is what it triggers a change. For example, the previous version has irritation and aquatic hazards. With the new candidate composition, H318 or the serious eye damage is triggered. And the signal word changes from warning to danger. The important part is not only the result, it is the trace. We can see the input fact and the role, the threshold, the evidence, and the reason why this hazard is filed. You can have that kind of information. You can get into data management, and you can clearly see your hazard classification. You can have these rule modules and your GHS packs or content boundary, those kind of things which you can create with some kind of decision graph. You can see, and it clearly shows you why this edges and all those things. That is something knowledge graph I incorporated so that you can create a rule. You can run a rule with natural language. Also, you can execute it. That I'll talk to you later. So once this is done, the next significant part is nothing but let me show you the product compliance. And then I go into something called SDS authoring. This is SDS authoring workbench, where you can clearly see your brand surfactant spray and its template preview with authoring content and those kind of things. You can open the repository and you can get into that system, and you can have the different payloads in terms of disinfectant readiness, disinfectant spray. What are the different sections? You can have the section information, evidences, number of phrases, those kind of things, which you can control with preview payload. You can control this kind of information, which has a different way, and you have a different SDS, what you call 16 sections. You can have those kind of things. Then you can have phase bindings. You can have publications. Those kind of things are available, which you can get into that one at later stage. So this is that SDS authoring workbench or SDS generation, which actually shows you that once the classification is changed, the SDS must change. The platform identifies affected sections and generates them from the governed property. Because based on whatever has been impacted, it automatically generates you the queue saying that, look, these all sections got impacted because of your change. You need to change this information. It identifies and it tells you what is that you're supposed to do with this information. And finally, similarly, you have label designer also there. For example, if you want to do label designer, for example, you can clearly see the label designer in terms of a template and code, the type, the status. You can have this kind of information where you can clearly see the label designer in terms of solvent blend, for example. You can click on that template. You can clearly see what are the layers, layer stop, and the canvas settings, bindings, and all of those things you can clearly see. and it tells you the labels conditions which you gets created. So label artwork is often the cycle time, errors accumulate. Here the label content is bound to the same classification and property model because once a hazard is triggered, label updates, signal word to JMDR, all that gets added automatically. So now, for example, now we have seen the label, SDS, and other things. Let me now get into the system of, say, for example, release readiness. For example, I want to see release readiness. So, for example, if I want to sell to Europe, and I can see here my Europe readiness review, where I can see my scope of population, blocked posture, all the content. I can see my compliance assessment, product readiness, everything. I can do my kind of assessment in terms of my market review, and I can get into that information and I can assess my market assessment, saying that whether this particular product I can release to market or not. I can check. So here the condition is you can clearly see the PFU and those kind of things. Also, you can see, for example, you can clearly see the product information, which you can see in terms of evidences, analytics, and readiness. You can see product runtime, everything SLAs. You can see those kind of. Okay, for example, if you want to open a review, for example, you can clearly see the review from the point of view of what is the market scope, composition, what is the composition, what is the PCN or IFE, what kind of data it is there, what is that use case, skip or article based, for example, if it is applicable, and consumer safety, European safety guide. You can have those kind of bindings and data evidences, everything. You can have that kind of information. So which actually tells you that the composition has changed materially. So the platform checks the PCN and EFI re-notification is required. The readiness check is important because you need to know whether this dossier needs to move forward unless the classification of SDS and label country coverage of someone. So that is as far as your European readiness is concerned. Now let's see if it impacts dangerous goods management. So what you can do is, let me get into product safety stewardship, product safety, product stewardship, and I want to go to market access, and I want to see for reviews. Product readiness review, I can see. Yeah, I can see my readiness in terms of compliance assessment, product readiness overview, European readiness overview, which you have just seen. You can have all that readiness checks you can perform, saying that which one is the one. For example, biocidal, you can clearly see ready for decision. You can, if you open that one, it will show you what is that is the information which you want to see. For example, what is the product scope, market scope, wherever you are trying to sell your products, what's its composition, and what are screening, skip, those type of things which you can clearly see, and we can identify what is that you want to do. So this is, and also you can also see the daily checks also, you can see consumer safety, those kind of checks also you can see, for example, you can identify. So this is how the data is shown for the dangerous goods or everything. And finally, if you want to see market release governance, if you want to see, for example, again, I want to see release readiness, and I want to see my products. My products, I can see where my product stands in terms of readiness review, in terms of readiness cockpit. Here, everything so far has a candidate state one. The platform does not silently push changes to production. This is the place where it actually shows you the information which you commit, then it goes into the system and it gets approved in the system. So This is how the data gets added to the information so that it gets pushed into the system. And once everything is done, you can also have release readiness, product compliance, for example, product compliance, and you want to see evidence exports. You can see your exposed data products evidences in terms of which data products, which supply declaration fact, which packaging component, which PFAS cleaning, governed evidence in terms of what is that you want to do, manual, everything is mentioned here where you can clearly see what kind of evidence is actually pushing your data products for the information to exports. You can have kind of control where you can have a control of your approved destinations, valid snapshots, everything is listed here. And so what it actually does is product regulated product steward is not only did we generate right document, the question is, can we prove how the decision was made? So here in this one, in this decision trace, you can see your input, output, and everything, and it can do everything for you. So it has a certain things which you can demonstrate. For example, the industry management, I could demonstrate you the proprietary how we calculate section 14 data automatically with one composition. We can generate multiple data. Otherwise, this is what is the overview of the capabilities, some of the capabilities. If you look into the most capabilities, you can see all the capabilities. You can see here, you have process maps, you have release readiness, you have regulatory respondent stewardship or substance stewardship, compliance engines or DG checks. You can have many DG shipments and everything, which I did not show yesterday. The partner collaboration, entirely dedicated section for your collaboration with your partner. So hope you like that flavor of what this platform is offering. I'll come with more detailed sessions in future, but till now, thanks for your time.